This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is the one that everybody wants, me.
Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
What's going on, everybody, guys and girls? Welcome back to another edition of the SmackDown Review right here on the WWE Podcast. As always, I am one of the hosts of this show, Michael Ritter. You can find me on Twitter at Michael5Ritter, and also one of the hosts of the Football Function Podcast, available wherever you're listening to this show at, and also available on Patreon if you prefer an ad-free experience. I am going to be rolling solo here again tonight. John Carrasco has some softball duties that he's going to be taking care of today, so I'm going to handle this show. And also, I do apologize for the show being a little bit later. Scheduling Friday night kind of got in the way of me actually being able to record the show, but I was able to watch SmackDown, and I'm here early Saturday to discuss it with you guys. So I do thank you very much for joining me here on this July 29th, 2023. The SmackDown, however, that we're covering aired on July 28th, 2023. And it honestly kind of flew by, if I'm being honest. Like, this SmackDown, every time I looked up at the clock, at least 20, 25 minutes gone by. And I was just like, damn, this show's actually flowing pretty well. I thought it was a pretty entertaining show. Great stuff. I'm going to actually touch on some of my opinions on, I guess, some of the things that happened during that show, obviously. But first off, honestly, this show was going to start out a little bit different. John was going to be here tonight, but like I said, he has softball in another town today. He's actually playing like here in about an hour, I believe. So he had some things that he had to get taken care of. That's totally fine. We already discussed it. Softball season. He's not going to be able to be here every single week. But if he were here, we were actually going to address something. And, you know, it's nothing really that I take to heart, but I did want to touch on it nonetheless. Because, I mean, I'm going to be honest, I don't look at reviews very often. You know, I don't really go look at ratings or reviews. And that's, sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. I look at it like as if you are going to the gym, you know, and you're taking a gym selfie every single day. You're really not going to be able to see the progress because you're seeing yourself every single day. You're seeing the slow progress. Whereas if you lift weights for about 3 or 4 weeks and you take a picture every 3 or 4 weeks, the difference in those pictures is going to be extremely noticeable. So I guess that's kind of how I looking at like show statistics, ratings, reviews, things like that. If you look every day, you're going to see the rare reviews that you get. You're going to, you know, get the comments here or there. But if you look every so often, like with reviews, I look every couple months. And then I kind of touch on it. I'm like, okay, wow. Like, so people have actually been enjoying the show. Or in some cases, not really enjoying the show. So I did want to kind of touch on that and just, I guess, throw the message out there that we want this show to be extremely interactive. You know, like we want the audience, the listeners, to be involved in the show. We definitely want it to be, you know, a fun environment and obviously a podcast that you guys can come and not get a lot of negativity. Like, we're going to be honest. That's number one. Like, I'm sorry if you don't agree with the things that we don't like with the show. You're, you know, more than welcome to have your own opinion. That's the beauty of wrestling. Everything is subjective. Just because one person says that X wrestler is the greatest wrestler of all time and you feel like it's somebody else, it doesn't mean either of you are wrong, because there's really no way of proving that. Wrestling is a beautiful sport because there's something for everybody. And that's something that I've always thought, that you can bring almost anybody into wrestling. I mean, if they have an open mind, so to speak, and they could come away at least somewhat entertained. Now, there's going to be some people who just can't get past the fact that it's predetermined and they're just going to rule it out right out the jump. And they're just going to say, you know what, I don't watch that fake stuff. It's not for me, whatever. And if that's how they feel, just tip your cap to them. Say, all right, because you're not going to be able to change their mind. But the point in saying all that is because whenever you're watching wrestling, there's going to be some things that you like that somebody else doesn't like. And it's just how they talk about it might seem negative to you because you don't agree with them. But for the people that do agree with them, they're preaching to the choir. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people who like to criticize this podcast, whether it's the SmackDown Review, one of the other shows, and say, you guys are too negative, blah, blah, blah. You just got to look at it from it's their opinion point of view. And then maybe it might, I don't know, let you get a little bit less emotional about it. I don't know. I mean, because just being completely honest, I put my social media at the beginning of every single show so listeners can interact, because like I just said, like I want the show to be interactive so all the listeners can voice their opinions, DM me on any type of comments, concerns, criticisms that you might have on the show, because that's the thing is I have really thick skin when it comes to this stuff. Like I can take criticism in the podcasting world, you know, like I've always kind of known that, you know, whenever you put your opinions out there for people to hear, thousands of people to hear your episodes, spoiler alert, there's a chance that people aren't going to agree with what you say. And also you're going to be wrong here and there. You know, if you're actually putting your opinions and your predictions on record, you're going to be wrong time and time again. So that's something that I also have come to accept and honestly embrace. Like if I'm wrong and I get proven wrong on something, I'm not just going to be, I guess, stubborn is a way that you can say it, and just stay on that side of the hill and say, no, I'm not changing my mind. If I'm provided with new evidence, I'll be more than happy to change my opinion on something. For example, whenever LA Knight first started doing the thing, I'm sure some of you remember, I was kind of a little bit iffy on that because I wasn't too familiar with LA Knight, and I didn't realize that it was something that he had been doing for a long, long time. My whole thing on that was, if you go back and listen, I just wanted it to be organic. I thought that it was his way because, I mean, what has Kevin Nash been saying? That he's a ripoff of Stone Cold Steve Austin. A lot of people say he's a ripoff of The Rock. I can kind of sort of see why they would think that if they're not familiar with LA Knight, because I wasn't familiar with LA Knight. And I initially thought that it was him trying to force his way into getting a catchphrase. And then I was provided with new evidence. I became a fan of it because I just was drawn to him as a character. Obviously, look at the crowd reaction that he's getting. You have to reevaluate things. And that's just something that I've grown to accept over the years. And LA Knight was just the most recent example of it. I'm sure there's going to be many, many others as years go on, because I don't plan on stopping voicing my opinion. You know, like I don't plan on just not saying how I feel about these programs, about these segments. I do feel like that's what makes the WWE podcast so good, is because you do get so many different versions and perspectives and opinions. People don't agree with each other on this show, and that's great because you're not a cookie cutter type. Yes, we all agree with what WWE is doing, or we all agree with what each other's saying, and there's no various opinions. I'm a fan of what this show has grown to be because I was here as a listener whenever it pretty much was a one-man band. Matt was doing all this by himself, and he didn't really have a whole lot of help. He was bringing on co-hosts, you know, Anthony DeMarco, Ashley Mann, Mary Grader, so several others of the OG co-hosts that would come on. And you would get, you know, a two-person panel, but it really wasn't often that you would get a whole different person hosting a show. So I'm glad that people have been able to step up and help Matt, because he really, you know, he's worked hard on this podcast, and it's really grown to be something that everybody involved, from, you know, the creator, Matt, to the co-hosts, everybody that's involved, and obviously all the fans and listeners can be proud of. And that's why whenever it comes to, you know, any type of, I guess just tying it back right now, when it comes to any type of thoughts and concerns, or, you know, especially the negative ones, come directly to me. If it's about me, of course. If it's about somebody else, I can't do anything about that. That's not my department, you know. But any review that I see on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, that's about the SmackDown review, I wish that you guys would just come to me, come to John, and tell us what your complaints are. We'll fix it, because like I said, we want to make the listeners enjoy the show. That's the whole point. We want it to be an interactive show, but we really want the listeners to be able to know that their opinion matters and their voice can be heard. So we want you guys to come to us. And number one, I don't want Matt to get a negative review for something that has nothing to do with him. Like, going to the reviews to leave a negative comment about the show being negative is a little bit contradicting, maybe. I don't know. I mean, 'cause I know that's what the reviews are there for, is for people to be honest. But something small, like a little complaint about the show that you could easily come to the host about whenever we put our social media at the beginning of the show, our email, if you want to get at us there, it really doesn't matter to us. But just, as a respect for Matt's show that he's built, I would just prefer that any type of complaint or concern that involves me or the SmackDown review, if you would just come to my Twitter, just come to me, that's going right to the source. I can fix it directly and we can keep this show rolling, keep this train moving, because the show is about you guys, the listeners. That's what we want. We want you guys to enjoy listening to the show. So just let us know what we can do to make the show better, and we're going to do that. So that's just kind of the whole point in this little intro of the show, is I just wanted to tell the listeners that their opinion will be heard. Just message me, get in touch with me directly, and I will definitely respond, and we can get this show improved to the point where you guys want it to be, because that's really what it's all about here. But all that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the SmackDown review, and let's go ahead and start with the typical. This SmackDown aired July 28, 2023 from New Orleans, Louisiana. Location breakdown brought to you by DJ Kuzmo. Shout out. Roman Reigns. He interrupts Jey Uso here in the very opening segment of the show. His music hits, and Roman Reigns comes to the ring. We get his typical long entrance, and I was a little bit intrigued as to how this segment was going to start, because of the last time we saw these guys in the ring together. Roman Reigns had to stop Solo Sikoa from giving Jey Uso a Samoan spike to kind of touch foreheads together. It was just a little bit of an interesting segment to close the show, and then opening it this way, I was curious where it was going to go. And Roman does kind of start tearing him apart a little bit. He claims that for the last 3 years, Jey Uso has secretly wanted to be the tribal chief. Jey pretty much calls that BS, and he tells Roman that he was fine, just fine being the right-hand man, because he respected Roman Reigns, and he also thought that he was capable of leading the family. But instead, Roman Reigns ended up breaking the family. And then, as you would expect, Roman Reigns immediately argues against that and tries to turn it on Jey. He brings up Jimmy Uso getting hurt the first time, the initial time that sent Jey Uso on a singles run, and he pretty much had to become main event Jey Uso. We all remember that back in late 2020. That was right when I started covering the show, actually, so it's a very important program to me, because it's one of the first main event programs that I actually covered as the host of the SmackDown review. But Roman Reigns, that is, says that Jimmy getting hurt is the only reason that Jey Uso got the opportunity in the first place. And that if it never would have happened, if Jimmy Uso didn't get hurt. And that's kind of true if you think about it. Like, really, there's no telling that Jey Uso would have been on Triple H or Vince McMahon. Anybody who's booking the matches or setting up these programs, there's no telling that Jey Uso was going to be anything more than a tag team wrestler had he not been forced to get in some singles matches. Like, what happens whenever, over the years, members of the New Day get hurt? Some of them have to go singles mode. Xavier Woods is the most recent one that's had to do it, and he's been doing just fine, and I feel like the Usos, it's no different. Jimmy Uso probably would have had to do the exact same thing, and to be honest, before this happened, I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, I was always a little bit more of a fan of Jimmy. I don't know if it was just because he was more polished on the microphone. The only way I could tell him apart back whenever I first started watching, back again in 2014, was the side of the makeup. Like Jey Uso's makeup was on his left side and Jimmy's makeup was on his right side. And once they got rid of the makeup and obviously cut their hair differently, you could tell them apart clearly now. And just because I've been watching for so long, it's a lot more easy to tell them apart. But back then it was kind of tough. And now, just look at the way that they're built. Jey Uso has been shredded. He has just been absolutely killing, whether it's a diet change, a workout regimen change. There's been something going on, probably a little bit of both. Honestly, he's just been training a lot better, taking care of his body. As he's getting older, he's starting to look younger. He's starting to look better. He's getting more attention in the ring for sure, and he's getting a lot more of a push. And I love to see it. And speaking of Jey Uso, well, first off, I'm going to finish this segment because I do have something to say about Jey Uso. Well, first off, Roman Reigns tells Jey that he's going to wipe Jey off the face of the earth at SummerSlam. And once that happens, he won't be a part of the legacy. And once Jey Uso does lose, or even if he wins, no matter what, Roman Reigns will still be Roman Reigns for the rest of time. Just until Roman Reigns dies, he's going to be Roman Reigns, is what he was trying to tell Jey Uso, in a way to tell Jey Uso that he doesn't have anything. Like, who's Jey Uso going to be if he were to lose? Because if he were to win, he would be the tribal chief right now. He would stop Roman Reigns in his path, in his run here as one of the greatest champions of all time. He would just put a stop to it. Bam, right here, SummerSlam 2023. And then Roman Reigns looks him in his eyes, raises his voice a little bit, and actually asks him, like, do you really think that you can beat me? Like, you're not on my level. Do you really think that you are going to be the one that beats me? And with a straight, dead look on his face, Jey Uso just looks at him and says, I already have. I'm the only one to do it, and at SummerSlam, I'm going to beat you again. And the look on Roman Reigns' face when he said that, you could just tell that it affected him. It shook him, if you will. And he may have his hands full because Jey Uso is not, like, this isn't the other Uso that Roman Reigns liked to call him way back whenever they were feuding the first time. He said, you were just the other Uso before I brought you up and, brought you with me as my right-hand man and you joined the bloodline and yada, yada, yada. This is a different Jey Uso that he's getting, and I think it's pretty evident. The thing I was going to say just a little bit ago was my girlfriend is a pretty casual wrestling fan, right? Like, she doesn't watch wrestling religiously. She is a fan. She has her favorites. She has people she doesn't like. But she's the type of fan that pretty much only watches whenever I put it on or whenever, she's sitting there. She won't complain. To be honest, like, it's damn near been our bedtime show. Like, for the longest time, it was The Office. Go to sleep watching a couple episodes of The Office. Well, here lately, we've just been watching various pay-per-views from the Ruthless Aggression era, whether it's Unforgiven, No Mercy, No Way Out, Judgment Day. We've just been watching all of those pay-per-views and just different years of them. You'll put on, like, for example, I put on Vengeance 2001, and next thing you know, I'm watching Vengeance 2004 just because it's playing that specific pay-per-view. And I think that's really cool, but she wouldn't necessarily watch that if it wasn't for me putting it on. And she's actually kind of a spoiled wrestling fan just because her first she's only been to 3 wrestling shows in her entire life. Technically 4 if you count the 2-night WrestleMania event, but WrestleMania as a whole. She went to WrestleMania 38. That was her second event. That's a huge one, right? Like, WrestleMania? Are you kidding me? It was the first time I went to WrestleMania, and I've been a fan for 20-something years now. But she also went to SmackDown in Oklahoma City. That was her first one that she went to with me, and that was in February of 2022. And then in April of 2022, she went to WrestleMania 38 in Dallas. And then in June, she came with me to a Superstar Experience show. It was pretty much just a Saturday night show here that the WWE does. I actually got my picture taken with the sign guy. You guys know the sign guy that I'm talking about. He was here. It's pretty awesome that he was here. Got to meet Asuka, the Street Profits, get their autographs. Got a picture with Bianca Belair. Got a picture with Rey Mysterio. It was a damn good event. But long story short, what I'm saying is the reason why I call her a spoiled wrestling fan is because typically, like, if you're a real wrestling fan, you go years being a fan before you actually get a chance to go watch WWE live in person. And if you do, you're sitting in the nosebleeds. You're not, you don't have a great seat. You don't have a great view. It's just not the best experience, but you still love it because you're a wrestling fan. It's your first event. But you get to appreciate those big events because you work your way up. You go through all those just normal wrestling watching experiences. But to have your very first live show you ever went to be a TV event on SmackDown, your second one just a few months later be Wrestle freaking Mania, for Christ's sake, and then your third one, you get front row seats, Superstar Experience, get to meet so many different wrestlers, go down, take pictures right next to the ring. If you've done a Superstar Experience with WWE, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Just the gift package they give you. We got a souvenir chair, a little miniature WWE wrestling belt, autographed hats. It was pretty cool, to be completely honest with you. And we're going to Monday Night Raw in Oklahoma City, October 16th. I'm going with John, my co-host, but nonetheless, I'm going back to a wrestling show for the first time. We went to the Royal Rumble this past year, me and John did. I always forget about that. How the hell do I forget about the damn Royal Rumble? But nonetheless, going back to another wrestling show, Monday Night Raw, and I really can't wait for that just because, you never get tired, I should say, of going to wrestling events. At least I don't. It's something that I've always enjoyed. You guys have known for the past few years, if you've been listening to me on this show, There's times that I have to miss because I go to Atlanta and I'm watching Falcons games. I like to travel. I like to go to events, partly because I'm only 30 years old, or I'm 29 to be specific. I don't want to rule out these last few months of my 20s. I have a bad habit of doing that, of just already accepting that I'm 30, when in reality I'm only 29 still, and I feel like I'm really going to regret not enjoying these last few months of being 29 and not just, beating it into the ground and already accepting the death punch of 30. However, 30 isn't the 30 in 1990, 30 nowadays, I really do believe 30 is the new 20. 35 is the new 25. With modern medicine, technology, just lifestyle change, the evolution of humans, we've kind of just, I don't feel like I'm 30, to be completely honest. I still feel like I felt when I was like 22 years old. It's weird. I'm sure a lot of people can agree with that, or at least maybe just my generation of people that are my age can probably agree. They don't feel a whole lot different than what they did, 10 years ago. However, everybody's probably a little bit different. I don't drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes, so as far as like my health-wise, I feel like inside I'm on the right path, but I got to make sure that I'm staying active and that type of stuff, because I was talking to my roommate just the other day, and I don't ever want to not be able to play the sports that I like to play. I don't ever want to wake up one day and just, I can't go run routes and play flag football just because I'm not capable of doing it. Or volleyball. Volleyball is another sport that I really like. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but volleyball is extremely fun. One of the most athletic sports you could possibly play because it is based 100% on athleticism. But I'm going to get off that little tangent. I honestly don't even remember how the hell I got there. I know I was talking about Jey Uso, but I got on a little bit of a rabbit hole, and obviously the whole reason why I did start talking about that was because I was talking about my girlfriend and how she has her wrestlers that she likes and doesn't like. And for the longest time, Jey Uso was one of the wrestlers she just didn't like. I feel like she doesn't like heels. So the fact that he was a heel in the bloodline and she really wasn't a fan of that whole gimmick, she really doesn't like right-hand men. And it's nothing like, I know that is a little bit of a pun for Jey Uso, but she's not a fan of Omos either whenever he was next to AJ Styles. Like, she just doesn't really like that lackey type of role in a wrestling company, I guess. That's just kind of the vibe I've gotten from watching wrestling with her. So she was never a fan of Jey Uso. But whenever he said the line, I already have beat you, and I'm going to do it again at SummerSlam, she told me that legitimately got her feeling something. Like, she started to feel something as a wrestling fan. And I was like, that's what it's all about right there. And she did change her opinion on Jey Uso. He's now over with her, if you will. So I thought that was pretty cool to watch. And she also has a 5-year-old son, and he was here, and he is a massive LA Knight fan, and he's a massive Charlotte fan. Like, he loves Charlotte. 2 weeks in a row, he said that he wants to grow up and marry Charlotte, which I feel like is just, I've never heard him say anything like that before. So the fact that he said it 2 different occasions about Charlotte was a little bit weird. But nonetheless, I was there as a kid. I had a crush on Victoria. She was the one for me as a young one. And obviously, Tori Wilson, Stacy Keibler. There was a lot of women's wrestlers that, people my age had crushes on growing up. But I just thought it was funny that the next generation, getting a chance to see him just say 2 weeks in a row that he has a crush on Charlotte was actually kind of funny. But let's go ahead and move on to another segment here. But before we move on to the next actual segment, we do have to talk about something that happened backstage. Grayson Waller throws some shade at Jey Uso, calls him quote-unquote Little J, and offers to give him the Grayson Waller rub after he wins or loses at SummerSlam. And spoiler alert, Grayson Waller thinks he's going to lose, so Jey Uso pretty much just slaps him right in the face, which, as you would expect, pisses off Grayson Waller. He goes to Adam Pearce, apparently bangs on his door multiple times just to get a match with Jey Uso tonight, and that ends up becoming the main event, so we will get there a little bit later in the show. Up next, however, Santos Escobar versus Rey Mysterio. This is a match that we hyped up and we talked about last week as the finals for the United States Championship Invitational Tournament. And it was 2 members of the same faction. Austin Theory actually watching from a suite in this match. It didn't really go on a whole lot. It was a pretty good little technical matchup for just a few minutes before Rey Mysterio banged his head on the outside of the ring on the floor. I will say I was a little bit worried at first, but it was posted on Twitter by a credible source that it is storyline. So don't think Rey Mysterio got hurt, because obviously head injuries are nothing to joke about here in WWE or in any sport. with the rise of CTE and just all the studies that have been done, you don't want to bang your head on the floor in any instance. So the fact that it happened and they somehow planned it to happen, I don't really know, honestly. It was, to be honest, I don't agree with it. If it is a storyline, I don't think it's a smart one. I think there's other ways to get around that. I don't really understand the point of having like Santos Escobar fluke his way into winning the finals. He beat the champion last week on SmackDown. It was just weird to me, I guess. I don't really know, but anyways, the referee has to stop the match. She calls it off and says that the match can't go on. Rey Mysterio can't finish. So yeah, we get a default victory for Santos Escobar, and he is the number one contender for Austin Theory's United States Championship. We get a backstage interview next with Kayla Braxton and Bianca Belair. However, it's interrupted by the women's tag team champions, Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green. And I will say, just really quickly, they had some pretty badass new gear. It was a black and yellow theme, similar to Logan Paul whenever he brought that out in WrestleMania, and I believe he wore it in a couple other instances. It's a great look. Wrestling gear, number one, can make or break you. If you have badass gear, there's a good chance you're going to get taken serious right out the gate, and then it's up to you if you can actually wrestle in the ring. But if you don't have good gear, you better damn well hope that you can put on a damn good show in the ring. Like Stone Cold Steve Austin, for example. The dude wrestled in black trunks, just plain black trunks for his entire career. But because he was such a badass character and just so damn good in the ring, nobody gave a, well, I almost cussed, nobody gave a crap. You know, nobody cared that Stone Cold Steve Austin had no color or any type of juice to his gear. It was just plain. He went out there to open up a can of whoop ass, and that's what the hell he did. But I did just really like their new gear here. I feel like it adds to them. They're a little bit of a push here as the champions. But they are upset that they haven't gotten a championship celebration yet. And they won the championships 11 days ago. So they just think it's a little bit strange that they have not been celebrated yet. They also said that it's quote-unquote ick. I believe that's a new word. If it is, then I really am just getting old and I have no idea what it means. But I assume not good, which means they're implying that it's not good and they don't like it that Bianca and Charlotte still get attention despite not being champions. Bianca gets pretty fed up with the disrespect and challenges them to a handicap match, essentially. And then Charlotte walks up and offers to even the odds. Bianca's kind of reluctant to do so. She's like, what? And Charlotte's like, no, I'm going to go talk to Adam Pearce and we're going to make it official. We need to be on the same team. And plus, Charlotte tells Bianca right there, she wants her at 100%. She doesn't need her getting banged up from a 2-on-1 match, because at SummerSlam, she wants Bianca at full strength, and you have to respect her for saying that. Up next, Hit Row has a segment, which is interrupted by none other, let me talk to you, LA Knight. He just absolutely starts roasting him. He calls Top Dollar Uncle Phil. He takes a shot at B-Fab as well. I believe he said she was horny or something like that. I didn't really get the whole gist of that, but I do believe that, I mean, he was just on a tear there. He said, who's better than Top Dollar? A lotta. Just a little bit of a remix of his actual rap. It was just hilarious what he was saying there, which leads to him squashing Adonis in a one-on-one match right after that. And I don't know. I mean, LA Knight's getting TV time every week. His music is hitting every single week, whether it is on actual television, which is here lately, that's been the case, or it's before the show, after the show, in the dark match, whatever it is. LA Knight, they know what they have, and they're taking the slow burn. I'm staying on board. Obviously, you guys know how I feel. I want it to happen already, but I'm not going to give up on it. I just think that they're passing up some pretty easy opportunities, but we do get a little bit of a seed for what could happen, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But let's just say LA Knight might get his opportunity after all. But before that, we see Lashley gift the Street Profits a new wardrobe backstage. He's just not a fan of the sweatpants look. He's telling Angelo Dawkins, we got to step it up a little bit. He gives them some new clothes, and holy cannoli. Let's just say the Street Profits are going to have a new look here very soon. They're going to look very different, and I'm all for it. Especially if they're teaming up with Lashley. That really could be a very dominant group here in WWE, and, you know, sign me up for that. Up next, we get Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green versus Bianca and Charlotte. A pretty sloppy match, if I'm being completely honest. Charlotte tags herself in at the very end to steal the win, but there was just complete dysfunction as a tag team. Like, every now and then you'll see single stars tag together, and it really works. Sasha and Bianca, whenever they were feuding, but they had to tag together on similar circumstances as to this, they worked really, really well together. It just really wasn't the same with Charlotte and Bianca. I don't know really what it was. They just don't really mesh together as a tag team. Bianca even says it. She's like, why the hell did you tag yourself in? I had it under control. We're just not a tag team. She said it off mic, but it was clear what she was saying, and I agree. Just throughout the whole match, I was like, man, this is not good. Moving on backstage here, Bayley finds another note from Shotzi in her bag as Io Sky is kind of calling her out for leaving her last week whenever she was a guest on commentary and ran away after Shotzi appeared on the Jumbotron. And Bayley kind of just, denies it, tries to sweep it under a rug a little bit. Asuka comes up and she starts to say something. I'm going to be honest, I couldn't really hear exactly what Asuka was saying in this moment, but I did catch what Io said at the very end. And she says it doesn't really matter who wins at SummerSlam because I'm going to walk out as the champion. She said it very clearly, and I do believe that was tipping her hand a little bit. I mean, I don't know. She could just be trying to hype us up and make us believe that and get us really invested that she's going to cash in. But my gut told me that she was tipping her hand, and successful or not, she may end up cashing that bad boy in. For some reason, they do not like letting the women's Money in the Bank exist for a long time. They usually cash in pretty quick. She's already like the second longest of all time to hold that briefcase. Liv cashed in the same night. Somebody else cashed in the same night. I don't really know exactly what happened. I know Asuka the last time Asuka won it, she traded it in for the championship whenever Becky Lynch got pregnant. I'm pretty sure that's what happened, but I could be off. But either way, Io Sky tips her hand, and we might see her cash in at SummerSlam. Speaking of SummerSlam, we have a SummerSlam Battle Royal, and I'm not really sure what's at stake here, but LA Knight walks up and says, hey, look, you already made a mistake not putting me in this championship match. Make it right. Put me in the match or something along those lines. I don't know if he's asking to be in the United States Championship match or just to get another opportunity at the belt, but Sheamus walks up, and they start taking shots, him and the Brawling Brutes, at LA Knight, and they kind of get face-to-face. They go back and forth, and Adam Pearce confirms that LA Knight and Sheamus have both been added to that SummerSlam Battle Royal, which I'm definitely looking forward to. I always love a Battle Royal, especially if we can make this like a yearly thing. Let's do it. I'm definitely all for a Battle Royal every year, especially if it's for something. It's almost like getting like a midterm Royal Rumble. Like you get a Battle Royal that has something at stake, whether it is a mid-card championship. I mean, it makes sense. It's a midterm Battle Royal. Have it be for a mid-card championship. Since the Royal Rumble's for the top belts, have this one be for somebody like LA Knight who's desperately trying to get a shot at that U.S. championship. But I don't want anybody on SmackDown winning that if it's going to mean they go over to Raw to challenge Gunther. Do not want that at all. We don't need to lose anybody on SmackDown. We need to keep our roster as it is. Let's just have a SmackDown guy win it and go for the U.S. title. I just think that makes a little bit of sense, especially if Theory's about to drop it to Santos Escobar. We could have them have their rematch at whatever pay-per-view comes after SummerSlam, and then really get into, building up a new challenger for that mid-card belt, and this Battle Royal could just about get us there. Up next, we get Karrion Kross versus Carl Anderson. This match stems from an attack a couple weeks ago, and because of that, Carl Anderson feels that this is extremely personal, and he demands that the OC lets him handle it on his own. And because of that, Karrion Kross defeats him relatively quickly. And after the match, he tries to choke him out. And obviously, his team comes out, the OC, and they try to assist and protect their boy, which they do because Karrion Kross leaves the ring. But this just tells me that the OC and Karrion Kross are nowhere near finished. I don't know if we do pre-show matches anymore, if that's still a thing, like for kickoff shows. But this has the making of, just continuing the mixed tag approach. Get Scarlett teaming up with Karrion Kross versus AJ Styles and Mia Yim, and we can officially close this bad boy because I do feel like it's getting a little bit repetitive, and they need to further it. Like, all right, is Carl Anderson, or Luke Gallows, is he going to be the next person that wants a piece of Kross? And then, I don't even know. Did AJ Styles and him already have a one-on-one match, or was it only the mixed tag match? The weeks kind of run together, and like I said, this is a little bit repetitive, so I'm not sure exactly what their history is to the T. I'm sorry, don't get in the reviews and say that there's too much guessing on the show. That's another thing that was said, is there's a lot of guessing. Like, we don't know the exact minutes of the match. Like, do you want me to write down the exact timestamp of every single match and tell you, or am I allowed to say it's between 10 and 20 minutes or something like that? I don't know. I just thought that was a little bit funny. People complain about the strangest things. But All we have left to talk about here is the main event, which was set up a little bit earlier in the show, Jey Uso versus Grayson Waller. And as the match is going on, about 5 minutes into it, I want to be exact there, about 5 minutes into the match, the Bloodlines music hits. Roman Reigns obviously comes out with Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman. Jey Uso does, in fact, win this match with a spear, which was weird. I didn't expect that. It was just strange. Just bam, hits a spear. Even Roman Reigns was like, what the hell? And then, believe it or not, he spears Roman Reigns after the match is over. And then he's about to do some more damage to the Tribal Chief. He climbs up to the top rope, about to hit a Uso splash on him until Solo Sikoa comes in and saves the day like he always does. Solo Sikoa deserves an MVP award during this Roman Reigns title reign because, man, Cody Rhodes' story is not finished because of Solo Sikoa. Drew McIntyre, his debut, I believe, Solo's, was at the hands of just knocking out Drew McIntyre and helping Roman Reigns beat him. He's come in clutch a lot, and you could probably expect him to have another impact on a Roman Reigns match at SummerSlam whenever that happens. But we do see something at the end that was strange. I don't know if they're working on doing this, but it was a spear spike combo. Solo's holding up Jey Uso in the Samoan spike position, and Roman Reigns goes and spears him, and as soon as he hits the spear, Solo hits him with the spike, and it's a tandem move, and holy you-know-what, that's going to put anybody out, and I just can't believe they haven't done it sooner. Like, that was just awesome to see. I was like, man, did they really just do that? And then obviously the commentary team touches on it a little bit and confirmed that's what it was. They showed the replay, and man, that's a very devastating move. But that does do it for us here on the SmackDown review. I do appreciate you guys for joining me here as I got through this show solo. It's never as fun as whenever I have my co-host here, but I do expect him to be back very, very soon, especially as we do the Go Home show for SummerSlam next week. Get at me on Twitter if there's any comments, concerns, at Michael5Ritter. I will DM you back, whatever it is. Just let me know whatever we can do to improve the show, because we definitely want this to be a more fun listening experience for you guys. And that's really what it's all about. So I hope you guys all have a damn good rest of your weekend. Walk passionately in the direction of your dreams, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.